right, everyone. There will be a few more of us trickling in, I'm sure, but just want to welcome you all to our DataWorks Salon today, where we're going to be talking about our Data Management Plan, or DMP Challenge. Welcome to everyone. I am going to hand it off to your host today, Yvette Seeger.
Thank
Yvette,
you, Meg.
take it away.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon for the final DataWorks Salon of 2021. And this one's slightly different if you've joined us for salons in the past, because this one, we are announcing the Data Management Plan, or DMP Challenge. Next slide. A little bit background before we get started. If you're new to the FASB DataWorks space, I want to just provide a little overview of what FASB DataWorks is. So this is a new initiative that we actually launched in September, and it is intended to bring the biological and biomedical research communities together to advance human health through data sharing and reuse. And if you're not familiar with FASB, FASB is a nonprofit organization that is a coalition of 30 scientific societies in the biological and biomedical sciences, and I'm very pleased that we have great representation from members of our board supporting today's salon, as well as others from across the country. Next slide. So DataWorks is composed of, the DataWorks initiative is composed of 4 components. And you see them on the top of this slide. And these 4 components are meant to foster culture change. Data management, sharing, and data sharing and reuse are not necessarily spaces where everyone in the biological sciences is really comfortable. It depends on where you sit, the type of research that you do. And so to help foster this culture change, FASB has approved a $1.5 million initial investment into building this social fabric, which is DataWorks. You can see at the top of the slide, the 4 components are the DataWorks Salon. So you are here. The second component is the DataWorks Prize, which we'll be talking a little bit more about in 2022. And a DataWorks Community, which is intended to help skills build for researchers so that they feel comfortable with the data management, sharing, and reuse. And the final component is the DataWorks Help Desk. Now, it's not just me by myself working on DataWorks. I am supported by a phenomenal team that continues to grow. So Meg is one of our consultants, as well as Lori Hack, who's running the slideshow. But we have a new team member, Emily Ruff, who has joined as our community manager. And you can find her in the list with the asterisk in front of her name. And so she is helping get all the moving parts of these different programs together. We're also working very tightly with our marketing and communications team, as well as our publications department. So this is an all hands on deck effort for FASB, as we recognize that data management and sharing is all hands on deck for each one of you in your research activities. Next slide. So today we're going to talk about the DataWorks DMP Challenge. So, what are the goals of this initiative? One is to help researchers craft effective data management plans, or DMPs. We'll be using that acronym a lot. The second is to elicit exemplar DMPs in areas of need. Specifically, what we heard in prior salons is the need for more support for image data, human subjects data, and just big data such as proteomics. Third is to recognize researchers for developing DMPs. We know that NIH is a little bit behind in terms of putting this policy in place for certain aspects of its granting. So this might be a new thing that you're working on, is pulling together, how do I do this? How do I pull together a DMP? And fourth is to generate feedback and review guidance for the 2023 NIH Data Management and Sharing Plan. And you'll see that as DMSP in acronyms. So we have the conversation space here today, but that conversation will also inform the feedback that we will share with our federal agency partners, in this case, NIH. Next slide. In terms of the logistics for this prize, the DMP challenge, FASB will be sponsoring 500 prizes for up to 10 DMPs that participate in the challenge. Submission must use the FASB DataWorks template available via the DMP tool, which you'll hear a little bit about in just a second. And the deadline for submissions is the 31st of January of next year. So you have a little bit of time. We have a wonderful slate of data librarians from RDAP and NLM, and I promise I will define those acronyms shortly. And we will announce the winners at the March 17th DataWorks Salon next year. And so as you can see on the right side of the slide, we are only able to make this DMP challenge work with our partners at DMP Tools. So this is the Data Management Plan tool, which is hosted by the University of California Curation Center. RDAP, the Research Data Access and Preservation Group, and finally NNLM is the network of the National Library of Medicine. So we're really thrilled to have them on board and be active partners in this initiative and helping us set up the framework so that this challenge can help researchers come up with their data management plans. So I'll turn it back over to Meg.
Yeah, all right. Well, everyone, we'd really like to take a moment for everyone here to reflect on, what questions do you have? What are you holding? What are the burning ideas or questions you have around creating a data management plan or writing a data management plan? And so we're just going to give you 1 minute right now to sort of jot down any notes you might have around what questions you hold around writing a data management plan. And after this minute, we're going to go into some breakout rooms. So back everyone. We're all coming back in. Yeah, I'm seeing there were already some juicy questions that got raised around writing a data management plan. And we still have some folks coming back in. Yeah, so if anyone wants to volunteer, I can start out. One of the questions we have down here are, how have you learned about the NIH policy? So if anyone wants to come off mute and offer any questions or talk about how they heard about the policy.
So Meg, I'm just from my group, we had a mix of librarians and researchers in our group, mostly from the East Coast, but we also had somebody from Qatar, which was kind of fun. And so asking about how they even heard about this webinar was an interesting discussion that we had. But that is one of the questions, is how is NIH getting the word out to researchers about this policy, and how, what researchers can do to write a data management plan. But the other question was, how is NIH engaging with librarians so that librarians can help engage with researchers? So what the folks in the team in the group were saying was that when the librarians know about this, at least the ones in our group, but when they go out and talk to researchers, there's generally a whole lot of when they talk to researchers about, hey, there's this data management plan requirement that's coming up. So
I'm hearing there's still a lot of questions around educating folks and all the different stakeholder groups about the new policy, and what are the engagement plans for each one of these stakeholder groups, for researchers versus other institutions.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions that came up?
My group had some great questions. I could review them with folks if you want. Okay. Someone was wondering what kind of feedback or review there will be for these plans. So researchers will be required to submit them to NIH. What happens at that point? Who's going to be reviewing them? What happens if a plan is found to be lacking? Like, what's the procedure for that? Another really great question people had were, how is the plan supposed to be updated over time? So how to keep it current which data management plans are supposed to be active living plans that reflect current practice. So what's the mechanism for doing that? Another question was about, will there be any kind of institutional support to kind of offset this influx of data needs to accommodate the new requirements? And then the last question was, will these plans be made public? Which I think the answer was no, but I can't remember what the final policy was on that. So some good, really thoughtful questions about the new plan.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm just going to put this document in the chat for everyone if they want to also add in any questions that you had but didn't hear, that didn't come up in the discussion. Feel free to drop them into this Google Doc. Great. Yeah, there's really some really juicy stuff here. All right. So anything else that came up in the groups that we want to make sure to surface here? Any other questions or areas of interest?
We had a question that I run into a lot, which is what even is a data management plan? And I really get that a lot, because the phrase data management means everything to everyone, as far as I can tell. Everyone just wants to say they're managing data. It's so trendy and so cool. And we're all doing it so well already in a lot of cases. But also a sort of philosophical question about the concept of having exemplars. Is this really going to produce what we need, or is it just going to produce a lot of cookie cutter, very similar seeming results? And so that's maybe in a broader sense. What is the benefit of exemplars?
Nina, thank you so much. And that's also a perfect segue, because I think there are still these foundational questions about what is a DMP and what's its function, and how can it be useful. So I'd love to hand the mic back over to you, Nina, to walk us through the DMSP template and sort of answer some of these basic questions about it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Meg. And I'm going to say that a data management plan can mean a lot of things depending on the context. There are many different situations that use things that they call data management plans. But today we're talking specifically about the new or forthcoming 2023 data management and sharing plan documents that the NIH has announced, but has fortunately not become effective yet, because we don't have some of the information that we would like to have. That's part of what what we're doing here today. So the data management and sharing plan is a supplemental document. It is binding. It goes in with an NIH grant and also other NIH funding mechanisms. If you do cooperative agreements or things like that, those are also affected. It is somehow in 2 pages. You're supposed to outline the entire proposed approach of data management and sharing. But what they really mean is how you're going to get the data to a shareable, disseminatable sort of format, something that can be shared alongside publications with the results of the grant. And it describes the activities that are anticipated as of the time that the funding proposal is written. So they know that over a 3 to 5 year grant, that's not necessarily going to be exactly what happens. Next slide. Up one, please. They have expanded what they want to talk about with data. They refer to it as affecting anything that produces scientific data. So currently, if you do NIH, there's only certain mechanisms, only certain types of studies, and only large budgets are affected. Starting in 2023, anything producing scientific data, regardless of mechanism or amount, will be affected by the new policy, and it affects any data which is of commonly accepted in the scientific community as of sufficient quality to validate and replicate findings, regardless of whether those data are used to support scholarly publications. And then they give us a list of things that it is not. This expands on it quite a lot by saying that it doesn't matter whether it's associated with a publication. But it also refers to the scientific community, which is why all of this has to go through the scientific community and can't really be determined by a bunch of librarians in terms of what the best practices and standards are, or at least why a bunch of librarians and other data sharers and documenters can't necessarily produce the quality. We may be able to say this checks the boxes and this hasn't, but we don't have the subject expertise necessary to produce examples in the first place. Next slide, please. But we do know what goes into a plan because they've told us, fortunately, it's got 6 sections. The types of data, which is a broad estimate of sort of file types and volume to be expected in a sort of compliance way. You know, how will a program officer know whether you're in the right ballpark of what you predicted when you submitted the grant? Tools, software, and code, standards for data and for metadata, data preservation, access, and timelines. So where is it going to be shared and when's it going to be shared? Reuse considerations, access considerations such as ethics, intellectual property, preventing yourself from being scooped, and then oversight, or who does the NIH call if they don't get their data by the end of the grant? Next slide, please. So those are very broad points, but we're going to be looking at and providing feedback on the submissions we get. One of the things that PIs always ask is, can I get an example so at least I can get a vibe for what I'm supposed to be doing? And since this isn't in effect for another year and a month, year and 2 months, then we don't have any examples yet. So fortunately, our friends at FASB and the constituent associations have been kind enough to give us the opportunity to review and give feedback, come up with some good examples, but also to give feedback to folks. So if your stakeholders are worried that they won't be represented in the examples or that there won't be good feedback for that discipline, this is the time to get that feedback. This is the time to say, hey, my discipline needs to be addressed in this very specific way. There will be a rubric to give a sense of what kinds of things we consider as data sharers and documenters and repositories and digital preservationists. But of course, how they're explained in the DMPs, DMSPs will affect that a lot. But then we'll give feedback on what we thought did and didn't fit the rubric. And you can always put it up online with an excoriating statement that those reviewers didn't know what they were talking about. They didn't even understand how multiomics works. And we will take that. We'll try to take that very humbly. I don't know how multiomics works. Are there any questions at that point?
Yeah, feel free to hop off mute if you have any questions for Nina.
So we have good links here, which will presumably be shared after this, which will link you to the DMP challenge rubric and to the challenge advice document.
Yes, we will be putting those, we will be sharing those links out, and we can also put them in the chat. Thank you so much, Nina. I'm going to now hand it over to Maria Pretzelis from the University of California Office of the President and the California Digital Library to talk a little bit about their DMP tool.
Great.
Thanks, guys. So yeah, my name is Maria, and I am the product manager for the DMP tool. So if you're not familiar, we are a free platform for the creation of DMPs. So we have templates for all of the main federal funders. We also have a lot of private foundations as well. We've been around for around 10 years. Most major universities are partners with us, have accounts in the DMP tool, and a lot of data librarians use us as a tool to educate folks about how to make a good DMP. So we've got a lot of good guidance in the tool as well. So I just want to talk a little bit about how to actually create the DMP in the DMP tool so that you can submit it to FASB and win $500. So the first thing you'll need to do is to create an account on dmptool.org. It's totally free. If you're affiliated with the university and they have an account with single sign-on, you can do that route, or you can just create an account with Gmail and just put in your affiliation. So either way it works, either way it is a free service. So once you have an account, and this is an important first step, after you have that account, you can click on the bit.ly that we have there, and that will take you straight into the FASB DataWorks template. And the way we created that template, it's basically the NIH data management and sharing plan questions. We added some specific information for this data challenge. We added some information about the rubric so you would know how the different areas are being evaluated and reviewed. But it is based on the NIH requirements. So I'll walk you through what it looks like, but when you're done, you'll need to make sure your DMP is publicly available. So we want to be able to share it with the community, and I'll show you how to do that. And you want to register your plan to receive a DMP ID. And this is a unique identifier for your data management plan. Technically, it's a DOI, and I'll show you where that is and what it looks like. If you could go to the next slide. So once you're in the DMP tool, you've created your account, you clicked on the link, the first thing you're going to get is the project details page. This is just giving very basic information about your project, title, abstract, domain, the funder, which is going to be NIH. If you have an funding opportunity number or a grant number, you can pop it in there. If you go to the next screen. The collaborators tab is, it's a tab system, so I'm just going to go through the tabs in order. The next is contributors, kind of speaks for itself. Anybody else affiliated with the project, you can put it in there. I do encourage you to use ORCIDs when you have them. This next tab is where you're going to write your plan. So this is where the bulk of your work will be. This is the actual narrative part of the plan. You can see for each section, Nina had just reviewed all the 6 sections. They're the same in this. So this first one is about data type. So the top, we've put in the review rubric so you can see specifically how this question is going to be evaluated. Down at the bottom, that's where you're going to pop your text in. And then I did want to point out on the right, there's a little box here where we have some guidance. Most of that comes straight from NIH about how they're defining certain things, like how do they define data, like Nina just reviewed. What does access mean? So if there's any kind of NIH guidance related to this question, we've popped it into that box there on the right. If you go to the next tab. So research outputs is the next tab. This is where for your primary research outputs, you can have, you basically are giving high level metadata that defines that output. So a title of it, what type is it? Is it an image file? Is it a data set, software? Then just if you have an intended repository, this is important. NIH is very concerned with making sure that appropriate data is made publicly available. So you definitely want to define what repository it's going to be deposited at. Any metadata standards and intended licenses. And this is repeatable, so you can have as many research outputs as you need for your project. You go to the next slide, please. This is the final tab in that workflow. This is where you're going to set your plan visibility. So you just want to make sure you've set the toggle to public. so that we can share it out. You also want to register your plan. So registering your plan is going to give you a DMP ID. It's also going to link that unique identifier to your ORCID record. So there's a workflow that you'll go through where you're adding your ORCID ID so that we can make that loop and improve transparency, give you credit for a great DMP, and add it to your ORCID record. So I think that was my last slide. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions for Maria? And you can either come off mute or you can drop them in the chat. All right. If we don't have any, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, if people have questions as they go through it, you can always reach out and we're happy to address them as you go. You know, feel free to check in if you hit something that doesn't make sense or you have any questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Maria. All right. We are going to go back into breakout rooms now for just a moment. We're going to go into slightly bigger groups and talk about the following. How can the DMP challenge best help you respond to the new NIH data management? So how can our challenge here in helping you use the DMP tool and create a really solid DMP for one of your projects, how can it help you respond to this new NIH data sharing policy that's coming in 2023? So I'm going to invite all of you into rooms again, and we've got, we actually have a few minutes, like 7 or 8 minutes to talk about this. And again, just bring your questions. Feel free to take notes in the Google Doc. I'll put it in the chat again, and we'll see you back here in a few minutes. Welcome back, everybody. All right. All right, I hope you all waved your magic wands and came up with all possible amazing ways that the DMP challenge can help us all move forward on this NIH policy. All right. I'm going to hand this over. I know we don't have a lot of time left. I'm going to hand this over to Yvette, Dr. Seeger, to sort of summarize some of the things she heard and also link us to a little more information.
All right, well, thank you, Meg, and thank you all for sticking around for today's salon and participating, hearing about our DMP challenge and providing feedback about areas where you still have questions and areas where you think the DMP challenge might be helpful. One of the things that we heard in our group, Maria was in my group as well and did a great job leading the conversation, is just the fact that there's a template. I don't know about the rest of you, but sometimes when I am given a blank slate project, there are so many things that are going through my head that I don't know where to get started. And I'm sure that many of you, as you're thinking about how am I going to take all of my data, and as Nina said, 2 pages goes very quickly. How do I make sure that I'm providing the best impression of my data and everything that needs to be there? So we're really excited to be partnering with DMP Tool to templatize. That's going to be my new favorite word, Maria. So thank you for instilling that. But just having that template to help you walk through it. The template is there to help guide you through the different components so that you don't forget something. Nobody likes an administrative rejection of a grant or a piece of their grant. So that is something that we heard in our group. There were a couple of questions about how researchers in different environments could get involved, such as if you manage a core and so you're working on a ton of different projects, how do you engage? And so I think it's for this challenge, if you can partner with a research team to utilize information or data from a specific project so that it's focused for the 2-page challenge, I think that would be great. But I know that there will be a lot of questions about this going forward. Do I use actual research data for the challenge, or if you want to use older data? This is just a challenge to get researchers comfortable in speaking in this new policy language. You might have a lot of experience with it, depending if you have funding from other agencies, but if you have been funded through NIH for a while, this might be a new thing that you have to add to your grant. And so the goal is to make it easier for you. Were there other things that came up in other groups? That was certainly ours, but hopefully some of those points resonated.
Yeah, anything else that came up in your group discussions, or anything you're taking away today too that you want to share? Either hop off mute or you can drop it in the chat.
Yeah, there are a couple things that came up in our group. One was that the NIH does have an implementation plan committee in place right now that's discussing how to do DMP. So that was nice to hear, and I think for the folks in the group to hear. There was some questions about how FASB decided on the data types and some potential interest in maybe doing this DMP challenge again with a different set of data types. So part of what we can do here is solicit some input from the community on other types of data that would be really useful to have these exemplars. And I think the other thing that Nina kind of reflects on what you said earlier was this idea of this kind of administrivia coming up, and people just saying, oh my God, it's yet one more thing we have to do for our grants. And so that templatization through the DMP tool, but also kind of the streamlining and understanding of what a data management plan is in first instance, hopefully will be helpful to the community. And then the last thing that came up was this hesitation about data reuse and the requirement for data quality checks. So you can have a data management plan, and the idea of research rigor and reproducibility is great, but where is that in-between piece between writing the plan, sharing the data, and reusing the data, that quality check on the data itself? So just some things that the group brought up.
Thank you. And I also saw Diane with her hand up.
I just have one little comment that's probably irrelevant, but may also affect some of the problems with doing data management plans. Did you people notice that this is like 95% women on this webinar? Why is that? Are the boys busy doing important things or what? Anyway, that I work on sex differences, so I just could not help noticing the incredible, oops.
Oh, don't worry, Dee Dee. We didn't miss a word. I didn't either. It's one of those lonely representatives in the group.
I think I just got booted off Zoom.
This is important, though. No, we can hear every word you're saying.
We can hear you. Yeah.
I think somebody's spying on my computer. I often note sex differences, but really, I
hadn't noticed that. It's an interesting dynamic that you noticed.
Yeah.
I will say the registration was more balanced, so maybe they're waiting for the recording.
Yeah. I mean, I think the slide deck will be really helpful if I have to explain this to anyone else, but I don't know.
All right, Lori, do you want to share the slides? Because I am looking at the time, so we can close out with just a reminder about the DMP challenge. Hopefully you are inspired to either join the DMP challenge yourself, and I will drop the link to our webpage where you can find a lot of the links that are on the slides. We'll also post a recording of this salon and the slides. They'll be available on the FASB website in a few days. But you can learn more about the challenge on our website. You'll need to register for the challenge, as well as sign up for a DMP tool login if you don't have one already. The deadline for submissions is the 31st of January by 11:59 p.m. Eastern. And Emily, who I introduced at the beginning, is your contact as our DataWorks community manager, and her email can be found there. And then I want to leave you with one last item of a potential interest, another DataWorks opportunity. So we talked about the DMP Challenge. Another opportunity that we're offering and have launched is our partnership. If you joined us in October, we partnered with OpenScapes to pull together user data champions curriculum to offer it to the FASB community. So this is a professional development opportunity for research groups or teams in the biological and biomedical sciences to develop leadership skills in open research data practices. So it's how do you work as a team to facilitate sharing in your team, but also start thinking about how you share and reuse data across research teams as well. Again, those links will be on the slide deck when they get posted. The deadline for nominations is the 7th of January. And again, Emily is your contact person, but this is a really neat opportunity for up to eight research teams to hone their skill set. And you can bring your research group as a team to apply for this opportunity and hopefully learn something new that you can take forward into your research. So with that, I think that is everything that we have for you today. I'll pause and see if there are any questions. But while we're waiting to see if anyone unmutes or raises their hand, I want to thank you all for joining us today and for the discussion and the breakouts. I know I couldn't jump around as much as I wanted, but this is all helpful feedback, and we hope that you will submit a DMP for the DMP Challenge yourselves and encourage your colleagues to do so as well, or maybe not, because then you can have a better chance at the $500 prize. So thank you all. Oh, I see Stephanie has a hand up.
I just really wanted to make a quick pitch for the article link that I put into the chat. This is written by Francis Collins and others within NIH, and he's really trying to put forward the rationale that, this is not about extra effort. This really needs to start changing the culture and having this be how researchers go about conducting science. It's just part of the process. And so if, hopefully that article may help resonate with your peers as you try to get them on board with this process.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, and it's wonderful to have these conversations with NIH and realize that we're both pushing the rock in the same direction. That it's all meant to make research more beneficial to the researchers who are doing it, but also the community that benefits from it. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you all so much. Feel free to, as you're leaving, drop any last thoughts or takeaways in the chat. And thank you so much for spending time with us today. Thank you also to all of our partners who joined us. Thank you to the NIH and to California Digital Library.